Welcome to This Just In, the show bringing you the latest advancements in healthcare, strategy, innovation, and public policy. And now, for the fastest voice in healthcare, here's your host, Justin Barnes.
Thank you for tuning in and welcome to This Just In. I'm your host, Justin Barnes. In these episodes, I'll bring you the latest advancements in healthcare, strategy, innovation, and leadership. As always, we're broadcasting from the This Just In studios on the Business Radio X network, as well as the Healthcare Now radio network. However, before we dive into my next guest, and as I briefly mentioned during my last show, I'm excited to announce on the heels of our 2024 Podcast of the Year Award, we just expanded our broadcast to the Global Health Podcast Network, and the phenomenal community there could not be more thrilled as we continue to grow and expand globally. Also, excited to announce that the This Just In radio show will be broadcasting live from the Georgia HIMSS annual conference on October 1st in Atlanta, Georgia, and we'll also be broadcasting live from the Health Conference in Las Vegas from October 20th to the 23rd. As many of you are, I'm sure, excited about the fall season, not only because of college and pro football season's back, but also the tremendous energy that the fall conference season brings to all of us as we get to see thousands of our closest industry friends and peers. I'm certainly ready, and I'm sure many of you are as well. And actually, one of my guests fall in that same suit that we're going to have on today. But get ready for this episode, my 305th episode, as we have an insightful show with a great digital health thought leader, Tony Nunes, Senior Manager, Healthcare and Life Sciences for AMD. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Justin, thank you so much. I'm honored to be here and also really happy for your success. This is the 305th episode. That's fantastic. That is fantastic.
Thank you, my friend. Yeah, I think that's probably the most that we have in healthcare. And so it's kind of cool. Very fortunate, very blessed. So again, welcome to the show. So how are you? Did you have a great summer? Any fun trips?
Oh, thank you very much. No, I haven't done much traveling yet. A lot of business travel coming up, but hopefully to pull something in before the end of the year. Something interesting anyway.
You deserve it, my friend. So for my audience sake, where'd you grow up, attend school, college, all that good stuff?
Yeah. So I'm actually Portuguese. I came here when I was a kid. My family came here. I'm from a small mountain town in central Portugal. And grew up for the most of my life in Rhode Island, and attended Boston University, and then attended Catholic University of Portugal in Lisbon, and just blessed to have come to this country and afforded myself of all the opportunities that it's given me and my family.
That's very cool. I didn't even know that about you. That's awesome, terrific. How did you find your way into healthcare?
Oh God, by accident, right?
Same, all of us.
As all things in life are, it's always by accident.
Yeah.
So I was working for a company called EMC, and many people probably know of EMC in Hopkinton, Massachusetts. And I was a system engineering instructor in the late 90s. And at one point, EMC acquired a company called Data General. Data General had an established healthcare practice, and when they came on board, they asked me if I would be the technical architect for the team. I knew nothing about healthcare. They said, you'll learn as you go along. That was almost 30 years ago. And you know what? I haven't done anything else since. So I'm a creature of habit.
Yeah. I mean, I guess my story is very similar. I was graduating college, and former president and CEO of McKesson was a family friend, and saw how hard I was working and hustling during college and in the military and Rotary Club and volunteering, and just, and obviously being a full-time student and a young man in business in town. He said, we need people like you. And so I was like, sounds great. I had no idea, no background in digital health or anything like that. But
when you're young and naive, you'll say yes to anything. And that's a good philosophy in life when you're young. Take the risks.
Say yes.
Good things
great,
come
actually. I mean, that's a great philosophy. Actually, we'll mention that again. Say yes. That is very good advice. It's steered me in a great direction. 27 years now in digital health, and it's worked out tremendously well.
Absolutely well.
So you come from AMD, love the company. It's a known brand, but tell us about your strategy for healthcare specifically.
Sure. So AMD is an established brand. It's been around for many, many years, but it's only within the last decade, and really under the leadership of our CEO, Lisa Su, where we've really focused the company around a specific strategy. And that strategy is excellence in engineering and frankly, excellence in delivery. And that's not always something you focus upon. But we've built our brand in recent years by being able to build the very best processor family, series of family solutions for the data center in the world, but delivering them on time. So to give you an indication of this, in 2018, in the data center, we had practically zero penetration in the data center. Today, we're at 35% in 6-7 years, and we have a visibility to get to 50% in the next 2 years. That's extraordinary, and it goes to the heart of what Lisa has been able to do. We create the best performing platforms in the world, and we release them when we say we release them, and with the capabilities that we say we're gonna deliver, and that's made a world of difference.
Yeah. I mean, very impressive, but also just seeing what you guys have been able to do. I know you said over the last 10 years, but even over the last several years, how you have grown tremendously in the market. I now keep a very close eye on you and similar companies, and you guys are doing phenomenally well. So congratulations there. So
thank you. From a healthcare perspective, if I could just add to that, we want to take the capabilities, and it's not just performance. If we weren't better performing, nobody would want to talk to us anyway. There's certainly that, but it's the built-in capabilities that we have in our product line, plus the performance that have made the difference. And I'll get to that a little later, but keep that in mind. It's not just simply being fast; it's being fast plus.
Right. Nope. Great point. Look forward to it. So on a personal level, what progress are you most excited to see occurring in healthcare today? Because we obviously hear when you hear the TV or listen to people, we have a lot of problems. We understand, a lot of us know those problems extremely well. We're trying to solve them in a lot of ways. But what progress are you most excited to see occurring today?
Well, Justin, 30 years, all I've ever heard is problems, right? Hospitals are always short of budget. Okay. Hospitals are always short of staff. There's always complications and redundancies. That hasn't really gone away. The difference is this, and I take this from personal experience just recently with my wife having surgery. You now have more information as a patient than you've ever had in the last 30 years. That level of access to understanding the procedures that are being given to you, the protocols that are being given to you, makes a complete difference in making sure that you're empowered. And it's a word that everybody overuses, but in this case, it happens to be true. Making sure that you're empowered into your level of care. That's the biggest difference. And technology has played a huge piece in this, but more importantly, the adoption of that technology into existing workflows in hospitals is the other. And it's what gets me most excited, because ultimately healthcare has to be fixed, and it's not going to be fixed from top down. It's going to be fixed from the bottom up as people demand better services and better quality.
I agree. And we're getting an absolutely great progress there. And I completely agree. Certainly when you look at value-based care and chronic care management and protocols, and you're layering in AI, I mean, we have a very bright future when it comes to these kind of, these technologies, innovations, processes, care strategies. So yeah, I completely agree.
I have an optimistic future for healthcare. I truly do. In contrast with a lot of my colleagues in the industry who see downsides to a lot of it, I actually don't. There's an old saying my dad used to tell me, that the worst never happens and the best is never achieved. And that's kind of my view of this. We are making incremental progress every single year, despite all the critical issues that you and I can discuss and everyone else can bring up. It's happening anyway. It's happening anyway.
A lot of wisdom there. So as a technology leader, what successful blueprint do you recommend to healthcare institutions today? I mean, for example, security, scalability, thoughts there?
Yeah, all of those are necessary. But let's bring this down to the common denominator across all of this. And that's a foundational technology. Okay. And by that, I don't mean buying from a single vendor.
Right.
I mean understanding that there has to be a baseline technology that allows organic adoption, organic change, that is the constant of IT. Okay. And my focus at AMD has been making sure that we're positioned as one of those key foundational technologies that allows breadth of choice, breadth of adoption from the people who run IT for healthcare. And that's how I'm positioning AMD as one of those key foundational technologies to achieve that.
Absolutely. Love it. So when you talk about, I mean, so specifically, I know you guys, I mean, go down to even the chipset, the silicon on the chip, the security of that. Talk about that for a second, because I know that's where you guys differentiate. Something I had to learn over the last couple of weeks and was very impressed with when I actually visited one of your customers. Talk about that for a second.
Yeah. So in keeping with the same vein of technology plus, there are certain things that we're able to do that are unique. In security is one of those things, and I'll broach that in just a second. But it has to go hand in hand with some other pieces to address the whole area of cost in the data center, which is a real concern.
Absolutely.
It means the ability to actually give performance with fewer devices to do it. So being able to achieve that level of performance with only a third the number of servers required to run the critical applications. If you can do that, you can then address the recurring cost around sustainability and energy. If I can reduce the overall cost of running the data center, okay, it gives me extra leeway to then adopt automation from AI down the road potentially. And if you have to adopt AI, you have to have a greater level of concern around security. So at AMD, we embed layers of security, we call it Secure Guard, directly on the processor, which no one else can do. And those layers of encryption, nested paging, et cetera, allow you then to adopt to changing regulations like NIST 2.0. I was in Rome several months ago and listening to a lot of the European health ministers address this, which is a real concern for them. AMD is the only company that's able to address those concerns around NIST 2.0 adoption, see the new CMS requirements next year around security, because we build it already into the processor. It's not something you have to add on to do.
I love it. You know, when I was visiting your customer OSF, I mean, just happened to hear about all that, and I'm, absolutely impressed. So you brought up AI. Tell us about this timely topic of AI as it relates to you, AMD. It's obviously a buzzword. It's been here for several years, but I'd love your perspective on it, please.
Yeah. So you can't walk around a corner or go to a vending machine in a hospital without seeing the word AI splash somewhere. And to me, it reminds me 15 years ago when the term cloud was being bandied about, which effectively was an amorphous term that could mean a lot of different things. This is certainly true of AI. So artificial intelligence or machine learning, while the two are not synonymous, it's been around for 15 years. It's simply an automation process that can replace existing staff workflow with something a machine can do. And adopting that is actually critical. So CIOs have a bimodal task that they have to adhere to. They've got to maintain the existing platforms, the critical care platforms, with a level of performance that's required for care delivery. At the same time, they've got to be planning out 2, 3, 4, 5 years into the future to adopt these automated processes to bring them in to lower the overall cost long term. That's the promise of AI. And where I'm seeing this in a hospital setting is not on the clinical side necessarily. There's a whole lot of talk of that, but really it's on the data, losing my train of thought. It's on the support side where there are questions, automating that piece of it, and certainly with chatbots, but eventually with digital humans actually talking to you. Is where a lot of this is going to be adopted first, or on the front end, where you have patient admission, patient discharge. And I'll give you an example. In New York, at one of the big IDNs, they spend almost $30 million a year in translation services given just the diversity of the population.
Yep, absolutely.
If you can get an AI platform, either as a chatbot or as a digital human, to be able to speak the language just as you walk in, because it's tied to your patient record, and immediately start speaking to you in the language that you understand, you've just eliminated an enormous cost off the front end. And that's where you'll see the adoption. Potentially, years down the road, you'll see some of the clinical side getting impacted, but certainly not at the beginning. The risk is too high, and the barriers to doing it successfully are even higher.
Yep. No,
That's
excellent
where I see
perspective.
it.
Yeah, no, it's excellent. And for those that may join us a little late today, my special guest is Tony Nunes, Senior Manager, Healthcare and Life Sciences for AMD. So I guess, you're a great thought leader in the industry, Tony. And so let's talk about, and a majority of my listeners are C-suite executives in healthcare. So let's talk about some of the trends that are out there that you see shaping up from your perspective.
Yeah. So clearly the trend toward streamlining and modernizing data centers will continue afoot. It has to.
Right.
Because one of our executives here at AMD had a great line the other day. It says part of our focus as AMD is to make room for AI. That was brilliant.
Yeah.
What does that mean? It means that the period of actually building out new data centers is probably gone, at least for the near term. Just the costs are too high, both in energy acquisition build up. So how do I take what is typically a typical 100,000 square foot environment for your data center and shrink it down by 2/3?
Mm-hmm.
And so that trend to tie modernization to the shrinking of costs is what every CIO is looking at. The experiences I've had in conversations with them is they will not look at any project today that doesn't have a payback of 3 years or less.
Right.
And that includes even some clinical platforms at this point. So if you're not able to address that cost factor, the ability to shrink costs, not just in the number of servers and the acquisition, but in the energy costs,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to get an audience to listen to you because those pressures are real, more so than at any time in the last 30 years that I've ever experienced. So that's the biggest trend. And at the same time, the threats on patient information have never been higher.
Right.
So you got to address both of those two things, because ultimately, as I said earlier, the adoption of automation through AI is just too compelling.
Right.
And you have to, but getting from here to there is the challenge. And that challenge has to take into account the shrinking of costs in staff, in acquisition, in building up the level of security to do it.
Yeah, and I guess you've touched on this, but I like to always share some best practices. How do people go about that? What would be the very next step or best practice or strategy to navigate, some of those trends?
Well, first taking stock of what you have. So I said earlier that I position AMD as a foundational technology.
Yep.
And I think an inventory of what that is for each institution is key. Understanding all the platforms that you currently support and their dependencies, and how best to actually run them. And the natural instinct is to just buy more technology.
Right.
And hospitals, despite popular notion that hospitals are behind the curve in technology, that's simply not true. Go to any HIMSS show, go to any Chime show, any health show, and you'll see that that's simply false. Hospitals acquire more technology than almost anybody. The problem is not that; it is the people and process side. So it's the adoption of technology, fitting into existing workflows, fitting into job categories to effectively make use of it. I've been on the vendor side for most of my life,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't even tell you the amount of times where hospitals have acquired technology and it sits on a loading dock for a year or more
Right.
because they bought it but can't figure out how to actually use it and implement it effectively. So that's where I would recommend everyone start with. Look at the population of applications that you're supporting. Look at their dependencies. Start looking at what you can decouple, and then make the decision how to run them. And that's either going to be on site, in the cloud, some hybrid form. Start there. And then start addressing what foundational technologies have to be in place, no matter what the vendor I choose to go with, no matter what the acquisition of technology comes my way. I had a client once who called this brutal standardization, the great line.
Mhm.
And when I was working on on the vendor side, I thought, well, that just means buy everything from me from my company. That's not what he meant by that. What he meant was get a baseline of technology that can allow you the flexibility of adoption and support, whether it's from one vendor or multiple vendors, whatever that may be. Choose that, standardize as aggressively as you can, and reduce the overall costs by making sure that it gets adopted into the people and process side of the business.
It's fantastic, sound advice, very sage. So running down this direction, thinking beyond today, what do you see as a key strategy or trend that we must be ready to successfully navigate in 2 to 3 years from now?
Yeah. So clearly the AI side is going to take precedence over everything else.
Yeah.
But it goes hand in hand with staffing. And I know we hear this all the time. Personal experience. As I mentioned earlier, my wife went through surgery just a few weeks ago. And it brought home the real issue with staffing. So from the clinical side, we never got the same nurse twice.
Mm.
So constant turnover, different people, didn't know prior protocols. That has to be, even in today's environment where you have electronic medical records, that trend toward just disparate and discontinuity of care from the staff has got to be addressed. And it's got to be addressed by making sure you have proper training and then standardization on systems that they'll all be using. Okay. So that has to take place. The IT side also has its level of shortages, and I'm not sure they're going to be resolved necessarily. So automated systems, not just on the support side, but in the data center itself. Automation platforms that have automation built into them in terms of support, whether it's on the storage side, on the server side, on the networking side. Those are the trends that are going to be there. And AI's promise is going to be able to actually fulfill those requirements, and that's where I see that going. And it's frankly a much easier sell to do that than to try to work AI into more broader clinical areas.
I agree. Fantastic. Terrific. So actually, let's move to the closing segment because I'd love to get to this kind of the lightning round. And I always ask these questions to my guests. Where do you invest your time, talent, and treasure, and why?
Yeah, well, right now, it's getting to understand the regional differences in healthcare, and there are in the United States, and certainly across EMEA. And so I'm working very closely with all the regional HIMSS organizations in New England, in New York, in Delaware, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, and in fact, if I can put in a plug for the Georgia HIMSS event on October 1st, where AMD is going to be there. I'm going to personally be there. I know you are, and invite anyone to come by and chat with me. I would love to hear your perspective. But those organizations are a wealth of knowledge because they're usually supported by all the key IDNs in that region, and they have specific requirements. And investing in getting to know them helps my business, helps AMD.
Yep, absolutely. I think it's probably good actually on time, right? We're perfectly right on time, my friend. You're a fantastic guest. This is the first time you've been here. You did a terrific job. So thank you very much. We're going to have you back. And I'd love if you would join my show. I'm broadcasting live from Georgia HIMSS, as I mentioned. So I'd love for you to join that show as well.
Honored to do it, Justin. Thank you very much. Pleasure being here. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. And thank you to everyone for joining us today. I truly appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us. And certainly to all my listeners and supporters who voted us 2024 Podcast of the Year, we're honored, grateful, and thankful. If you missed any of this episode or want to tune in to hear more, all my shows broadcast weekdays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Pacific. You also can track us on LinkedIn at Justin T. Barnes or track us on Twitter at HIT Advisor and use the hashtag #ThisJustinRadio so we can respond to your comments from the show. If you miss any of this or want to hear more, Apple iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and TuneIn all publish our shows and distribute. And also put out some new content at justinbarnes.com and the Thought Leadership page. So check that out. So some really cool stuff out there, some new ebooks out there. So appreciate everybody's time. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.